Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. I'm really excited to have today's guest, and I'm sitting down with Vicki Marsh, who is the owner and clinical director of Head Start Massage. It's a sports injury and performance clinic that is based out of the UK, but she's also the host of the Massage Therapist Business and Marketing podcast, a podcast for everything a massage therapist needs to run their business, as well as doing the coaching component of it, where she's helping massage therapists grow in their businesses. So thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and speak and do these things. Where I want to get started is, a bio. This is, I think, just a fraction of kind of who you are, what you have to bring to the world. Kind of just tell us a little bit more about who you are and what got you into massage and business in the first place.
Sure, absolutely. Well, hi to everyone listening, and thanks very much for having me, because I'm definitely stoked to talk about this stuff today and hopefully give a little bit of value for guys. Because I trained as a sports massage therapist maybe like 15, 16 years ago now, completely accidentally. Wasn't in my plan whatsoever. I actually was really into doing like coaching, so for rowing, like on the river rowing. And I just thought, you know what, like maybe if I get a massage qualification, maybe when I'm older I can do a little bit of it, it might be helpful. And I ended up, as a lot of people do, falling in love with it, but had no idea about how to run a business whatsoever. So absolutely relied on being very time rich. I was sort of in my early 20s, had just graduated, like was doing all this rowing myself and training and coaching and just massaging people and having loads of fun, and really enjoyed it, and didn't really realize how hard I was working for how little money. And then got excited about the opportunity of like building a clinic and like healing the world and being this like sports center that people could kind of come to and stuff. And the kind of long story short, I ended up over expanding. I ended up doing all the work myself and kind of not really kind of knowing how to have conversations with like other therapists I was working with. I really wanted to make sure they had enough money and that they didn't have to worry about stuff, and just got completely burnt out. And then as a result, ended up like effectively losing the business, not being able to train and things. So it's kind of, I got sucked back into massage with a friend. She kept begging me to go around to her house for dinner, and then going, while you're here, could you have a look at my wrist for me? So she lured me back into it. But of course, second time round, I was very hesitant and really didn't want to go through all that again. So kind of really made it my mission to be like, right, this whole business thing that I've kind of veered away from, didn't like, I'm going to have to learn some of this stuff. So have just spent that probably the last 6 years or so, trying to still heal the world, but do it in a way that means that I don't have to heal myself and that it's manageable and scalable and stuff as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And so for people who may not be familiar with you, can you just give us a picture of just what your practice looks like today? I know there's some COVID related. This is like the first episode, the first non-COVID specific episode that I'm recording in the midst of this pandemic. But let's say in a normal time, just kind of what's the general arrangement of your practice? How are things set up?
So we last year moved premises. So we've got our own premises now that's just us there. We've got kind of a 5 or so treatment rooms, like a small studio space, and we have a mix of employees and contractors. As a business, we're moving towards employees because, like, for me, it's really important that people are secure in their job, but it also helps me as a business owner be able to have more control over things. So that's the only downside with contractors, in that like they can kind of slightly work when they want to work and things. So it's been a big step, but it's worked brilliantly. At our practice, we have a lot of training and development time. It's actually like kind of 15 hours or so a week that our employees have that they're paid for various sorts of training, like solo, we call it CPD over here in the UK, like, but like CEU type sort of stuff. So they have like solo time, we have group time, and we have an awesome hour, and various other kind of things. And then as a result, it means that they're super stoked to be at work. They're not overworked in the sense of like burnt out with clients, but then the clients then are getting so much value that then we're really privileged that we have like a membership, and that then clients can come if they want to and join that and become like long term. So business wise, that's made a big difference during COVID, but just in general, to know this amount of money is coming in guaranteed with stuff. So it's kind of, there's a lot of teaching that we do for our clients, and then teaching for the therapists and stuff as well. Like, you know, you don't want to get to a point where you feel like you're just kind of done and that's it, and you're kind of stuck in the job. So there's a big focus on that for us, for sure.
And I want to talk a lot about some of the growth that you've seen over the years as you've grown your practice, talk about some of the things that you do with helping other massage therapists, but to address sort of the elephant in the room, because COVID is, at the time of this recording, where I guess depending on where you want to consider the start, we're like 6-7 months in. Who knows what the end date is going to be? This is not like a quick thing that just kind of came and went, and I guess sort of this micro level. So how has this pandemic affected your business, and just what are some of the shifts that you've been making in this meantime?
That is such a great question. So like, in full transparency, yeah, absolutely, the amount of money that we earn each month has gone down. But one of the other things that we did immediately was also worked on, and we do this regularly anyway, like reviewing outgoings and stuff, but like we were really assertive about contacting the software companies, about speaking with our landlords and things like that. So actually, from the point of view of by taking action early on things, I think it's very much like plan for the worst and hope for the best. By planning for the worst at the beginning of this, it meant that we didn't then have like 2 months of paying full fees of stuff where we then weren't earning things. But we also then was like, well, you can reduce costs, but again, how are we going to increase our income? And we had the membership, which was kind of great. But we basically asked our clients, and we sent an email out saying, we kind of have 3 options, guys. With what's going on, we could just close permanently. It's not what we want, but that is an option. We just close permanently. We sort of shut the doors and say, right, given everything that's going on, that's it. The other one would be to close and then not communicate with clients, not do anything, and maybe reopen in the autumn time and see whether we can restart then and whether that's possible. Or we can try and keep going in whatever form that kind of looks like. And overwhelmingly, everyone emailed back and was like, please keep going. Like, don't stop. And I was like, right, well, that's great, but what are we going to be able to do? So we immediately shifted to try and do online one-to-one appointments. They are massively different to in-person. So many different things. The physical experience, there's this whole thing of like, what do we do if we can't touch people? And there is absolutely so much value we can offer. I'm sure we could do a whole other episode on that, but there was a lot of a learning curve with that. But what we found that was the most successful was to actually do online classes and workshops with things. We found that people seemed to be willing. A lot of people had to learn how to use Zoom early on. They didn't know how to do online kind of stuff, the clients and things. So we found that like a class was a really easy way to get people in and used to logging in, seeing our team, and that then allowed them to move to one-to-one appointments. And as a result, of course, you can have as many people as you want in a class. It doesn't have to be one-to-one. So it meant that we could slowly build that up. And we'd already been thinking about doing in-person classes. So we kind of just brought our timetable forward, pivoted a little bit, and also followed the numbers, like what was working. And the reality is that we were finding it hard to get new clients in for online one-to-ones. And I knew that we needed to find some new business. So shifting this class perspective meant that we were able to get some new business in and sort of keep ticking over until we're able to do the in-person again.
And one of the things I wanted to then look back on, because, COVID aside, I think now you're in a place that the business is doing quite well. There's always more. I think if you ask any business owner,
Hmm.
there's always
Hmm.
another next level. But something I think is really important, because we've spoken before just about a little bit of that process of really losing the first business, and not so much that process of losing it, but what kind of that intermediate time was before you started things again. Because I really think for a lot of people, I know that some of the listeners, we have people who are well more established businesses and they're looking
Hmm.
at like, okay, how do I open my second location, or how do I bring on my fifth, sixth employee? And then we have people who are maybe a little bit more in those early stages. And I think this idea of, I guess, loss or a setback or something that is seen
Mm.
definitely at this time as a failure. Some people would
Mm.
pivot, they would completely leave massage, they would completely do something else. And, I respect anyone's decision, but really, what was that sort of intermediate time? What did
Mm.
that look like for you? And then what were some of the things that you were like, okay, I'm doing this differently the second time
Mm.
around?
Again, that's a really good question. So I think with any of this, and I think probably people who are listening as this goes live, or even the people that are listening later, there's when things go quite catastrophically off plan, whatever that might look like. Something happens to your shop, or we have COVID, or like I say, and like I say, I ended up going bankrupt through mine. So that was pretty off the charts with kind of stuff. There is a massive grief process that we don't even comprehend or even think about. You're in this just reactive mode of just like get on or deal with stuff, and it really takes some time for that to settle before you can even begin reconnecting with A, what had happened, and B, what do you want to do. I think that before making any shift in your business, be that restarting again or fear about moving to a bigger location and this, that, and the other, I think it's massively important to reconnect with your why you're doing this before you do that, because that's going to be your fire, that's going to be your drive, that's going to give you your tenacity, that when you do have physical problems that come up, so you don't have rent that month, or a therapist doesn't turn up, you've hired a therapist and they don't turn up for an interview, it gives you that drive to then not give up at that point. But it is very important as well to, and this, I think this has to happen after your why, is to be able to reflect on what went on and without judgment, take responsibility for your role in things. So for example, COVID's such a great one. It's really easy for us to say, well, that wasn't me. I did everything I possibly could. Like, this is a global pandemic, for heaven's sake. But the reality is that there's all these small decisions that you've made every day. Like, you chose not to increase your prices. You chose not to learn how to set up your email marketing system, which meant that when COVID hit, you were more vulnerable, or you were in a position where it could have affected your business more. In my case, I went first time round, relied solely on my personal skill as a therapist. I didn't spend time training the other therapists in how to rebook. I didn't even want to spend any of my time learning about business. It was this boring thing. So it put me in a vulnerable position. And of course, nobody could have predicted that I'd gotten unwell or would I, get into that place. But moving forwards, it then meant, right, what did I choose that I could do differently this time without judgment? Because I didn't know any better then. And I think that's what's really important. None of us choose to make decisions that make us vulnerable in our business or our lives. We do genuinely the best with the information we have. But second time round, you do have more information this time. So another thing as well is the fear. I was bricking it with regards to going back to work that second time. I'd made massive mistakes and was hugely humiliated with, locks being changed and therapists not being able to be in, that you have to go to the court to register bankruptcy. It is horrible. It's not, you'd never choose it with stuff. And acknowledging that you've got that kind of fear, but knowing that you're not the same person you were first time round. You've got more knowledge. Your physical situation may be different. You may have a partner supporting you, you may not. So remembering as well that whenever we try and go back to perhaps hiring a therapist again, because the first time they stole from you or they let you down, you know more now. and you can put some systems in place and some checks in place to check that you're on track with stuff. So that being able to reflect and learn, but also know you're a different person this time is, I think, really, really valuable.
Now, one of the things we talked about previously, like the last conversation we had, and kind of mentioned here a little bit, is this idea of business systems. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. A lot of things that I do are based around marketing systems, but when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to operations, there's so many other interconnected parts that are something that I kind of stay away from and try to bring the people who are best at talking about those things. And so what I've been able to see with the different businesses is I think most people, if they're at the point they have a team, they probably have a pretty good grasp of systems. I think a lot of people have a very hard time scaling beyond one person to
Mm-hmm.
multiple people if they don't really have solid systems. Maybe some people can get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
So for the people who are, they're still solo therapists, like you've been through this process of going
Mm-hmm.
from one to many. What does it really mean to have systems in your business, and like what are the ones that you really start to emphasize and prioritize
Mm-hmm.
first?
So I think, like, almost rolling it back to, like, even, I mean, I even now, whenever I hear the word systems, I almost get like a little shudder, because it's this whole, like, what is a system? It sounds like a business admin boring thing. How is it going to be valuable to me? And how is it going to actually help me help more clients with stuff? So I think the first point is actually starting to understand, well, what is a system and what does it look like? And a system effectively is a way of doing things that is repeatable. And I find the easiest way to kind of get that click is, like, we have systems in how we treat our clients. You have a system, it's not written down, but you have a particular way that you welcome your clients in. You might offer them a glass of water. They might, you might sit down with them and chat beforehand. New client, there's a consult form. There's a way you go about stuff. You then maybe explain what you're going to be doing in the session. That's your system. It's just not written down. And the reason that systems are really useful is that it saves brain power and it saves time. It means that you can keep tweaking it and go, oh, hang on a second, actually, that client actually, they asked for tissues. I don't have tissues in the room. Right, I can now add that and let them know that that's available, or where the bathroom is. So you can also keep leveling up your service. So we have those anyway. And you also have systems, if, no matter what type of massage you're in, and literally how you deal with the problems that people bring. Okay, if someone's got back pain, well, I'll start with this type of technique first. So with the kind of admin side of things, again, we do have ways that we do things. There's a particular way you might reply to emails, the way you take payments. I find that most people tend to learn it slower, because the first hire that they make is another therapist, typically, because they've got too many clients, or they might want to have a bit less time in the shop. So they're like, oh, I'll get someone in to cover. And then slowly they realize, oh, I need to teach them how to open up. I need to teach them how to close up. I need to teach them what happens if the fire alarm goes off. What I did, and is actually what I typically recommend, and the reason that I did this is because I was busy, but I was a solo mum with like a young baby. I actually got admin help first, and I had a virtual assistant. It could be an in-person who's at your shop, but that made it much more obvious what a system was. I had to teach them how to complete the payments on my booking system. And so the easiest ones to do are the types of systems that if I asked you, right now, how did you organize getting me on the podcast, you could quickly rattle that off. So a therapist listening will be like, well, how do you book in a client when they email you? And it's like, okay, well, I don't know. I mean, I check the diary to see if the time's free. Cool. Yeah, that's the first step. Okay, so what if there isn't a time free? What do you do then? And what if there is a time free? It's then mapping those systems first are the easiest ones to do, because you do them without thinking. And that then gets your brain used to thinking in a systems way, which then makes it a lot easier to then actually build more and build them out quicker.
I know that's a topic for me that I think when you first get introduced to systems, at least for me, it was like, oh, I've got this. I kind of figured this out. And then the actual process, I know for me, very similar of like, once you've made your first hire, like just having an assistant take care of even a handful of tasks, and
Mhm.
giving it to them really opens up your eyes of like, either yes, you do have a system, or you don't, or maybe you do have a system and there's absolutely no documentation whatsoever, and you're having to like oversee, kind of micromanage something when it should just be written down. For you, when you think about like the documentation of your systems, just when did that process start for you, and how do you like to do it? Purely written down, purely video, a combination, something else?
Yeah, no, good question. Um, so when I had my first hires, I did not have systems. So I would give them a task, as in like, please go research this because I might need to, I don't know, like buy some new couch covers or something like that. And I realized very quickly the work came back, and I was like, well, I guess that fits what I asked you to do, but that is totally not what I meant. So that I very quickly was starting to go, hang. And then also I was like, ouch, I've just paid you for an hour of this stuff and I haven't even got anything useful from it. So very quickly with low budget, I learned, oh my God. And I think I only worked like 1 or 2 hours a week with an admin, because it was a lot of money. I was like, this is, I'm a solo person. I'm not earning much. I'm on limited hours. So I learned very, very quickly that the clearer my instructions, the more likely I was to get what I wanted. So that in itself, like, I learned very quickly, spend 20 minutes researching this thing, find things that are 5-star rated or above, and give me at least 3 examples. Boom, and I was like, oh, that's a lot closer, right? Or like one time I forgot to specify, because I'm in the UK, like, please make sure they deliver to the UK. So I got some great ones, but they were like US. I was like, oh, for God's sake. I was like, right, can you go back? And so there is absolutely a learning process with systems, but the quickest way to learn is with a hire. So then documenting them, I think because I was in that process of slightly nerding out around business, I'd been listening to perhaps like Amy Porterfield's podcast or James Wedmore or one of those ones, and they've mentioned about some software. So I use something called Suite Process, and it just is no different from if you're putting steps in a Google document with stuff. It just makes it look visually prettier, and I'm quite visual, but it also has like check boxes for things. You can easily add in screenshots, a little video if need be. So then coming on to sort of the question that you kind of asked, like more specifically, if it's a sort of computer based sort of task, then I find like written and screenshots, like screenshots are so valuable. And although it takes more time to screenshot each step and where the button is, honestly, doing it that way means you don't have to go back and show someone like where it is, because it might seem obvious to you, but if someone's never literally logged into your website or wherever it is before, then they're not going to know. So screenshots, pictures says 1,000 words. But if it's the there's maybe like some customer service kind of stuff, or say it's something physically in the clinic, then we might do like a video to show. Again, it's much quicker to show, this is how to, we've got, I don't know, like we've got a damp problem, so we have a dehumidifier. So it's actually a lot easier just to film a 30-second video of how to empty and refill it than do 20 steps and then do that. So it's also thinking, when you're creating it, what's the quickest way to create your process, and then making a process that is the quickest way for someone to learn with stuff. So, and doing a screen cast where someone's doing stuff on a computer, sometimes people are like, hang on, I can't see what's the bit that they did. So it's just trying to learn what works better. So yeah, in clinic I probably do physical tasks where you're moving things around or sweeping the floor or whatever it might be. I'm probably more likely to do a video because people can then see, whereas when it's a computer based task, I'll probably do the written primarily, and then screenshots for stuff.
Now, everyone gets, probably the most common first hire is another therapist, someone that might be in the admin route. What were some of the first systems you started documenting, or if the answer is different, like what would you recommend? Someone's like, they're listening and they're like, I'm a solo therapist. That sounds really cool. There's a million and one systems in my business. Like, what seems to be a good place to get maybe the first one, if not the first few?
So a good way of thinking about it as well is like, which things are going to earn me money. So as a result, it's often stuff around clients and booking them in, like missing that booking, because someone called or you didn't email them back or someone made a mistake in the diary or what have you, that can actually cost you money. So you can, as a solo therapist, even before hiring, start documenting, again, how do you book people in, how do you cancel, what happens when you go on holiday, like document what do you do, you know. What I do is I tend to leave it very late in the day, so often I haven't pre-booked it in, so I have to move clients around. So if you're organized, you would say, right, I look 3 months out, I block the diary and I let everyone know by email. My system's different. It's like I block the diary, there's 3 regular clients already in there, so I would contact each of them to ideally move their appointment so we don't lose it, or B, if need be, then cancel with stuff. So anything that is like, client focused and booking, particularly sort of customer service booking, is a really good place to start, because then either another therapist can follow that, or then you can have an admin support and answer your email, or a call answering service or something like that, and be able to then again hand that over.
And then on the maybe not opposite spectrum, but then looking towards the businesses who have multiple employees, because I think I really want to talk more about how you do training. I think in the last call that we had, I wrote down, I think it was an awesome hour. I thought that was a really fantastic idea. You do a lot of training, and I wanted to understand more about that. And I think it's connected in some way, not just how you do the training, but the decision between employees and independent contractors, because this is a very common, I think issue is the right word, but a very common situation is that a lot of people have independent contractors, and there's definitely pros and cons to the logistics of expectations and I guess investment even that people would put into their team members. So I guess I'll start with, how is your training typically structured, and when did you start that?
Mm-hmm. So I hired a few therapists initially and did basically no training, and then built out some of these things of just, or how do you use the booking system? Like literally, like how do you rebook somebody and take payment and stuff like that? And found that we got very variable results in their performance. And quite often a lot of the therapists weren't rebooking well. And it was very hard work as the business owner. I was constantly having to focus on getting new clients in. I feel like all the burden of responsibility was on my shoulders. And I really wasn't equipped to have, those sorts of tough conversations of kind of saying, look, you want to be part of this, you need to put some effort in. I just found those very, very kind of difficult. I then got lucky with a few therapists that showed very good initiative. And I was like, cool, I've got this. Still didn't really have any training, like no regular meetings. We didn't even have break times at the same time because they were contractors. They would just pick their hours. Then I got another few bad hires and I was like, what's going on? I thought I got this sorted. And then I realized actually, I've been relying on the initiative and the sort of the nat nous, as we say over here, but like the ability to sort of like streetwiseness of the ones who were like, actually, no, I'm going to learn myself how to rebook. And that began a whole journey of like, oh my God, there's actually a lot in here to reliably create a therapist. You can see that raw potential. I don't think anybody hires anyone because they're like, oh, you're going to be a rubbish therapist. But there's actually loads of stuff, if you are busy as yourself, that you learn through trial and error over potentially years. You're potentially expecting a therapist who, there's kind of a reason they're working for someone else, because they're not building their own business. So they actually do need more support and guidance. So now, sort of fast forwarding through a lot of trial and error. And as we moved premises as well, me and my clinic manager, we sat down and we were kind of like, right, let's go big or go home. Let's genuinely create the type of business that we want. And it feels like it's going to be a big risk, but let's put loads of training time into people. Let's build this, because at least then we can trust the training and know that we've done a really good job training. And then if that person still isn't performing, we know that then that's the time to have the conversation and let them go. And actually, so far, touch wood, everyone who's gone through has done really, really well and been successful. But the way that it looks for us, there's 2 components. But when somebody joins, we have, we call it level 1 and level 2 training. But level 1 is like the how to do a booking, how to lock up, how this, something. It's kind of the boring stuff that no one's that excited about with stuff. And our level 2 training is kind of the why. or getting them to start thinking about, why do we even do it this way? What's our purpose here? If our sole goal is to be trying to help clients, how does learning how to change the dehumidifier actually help? We don't actually have a lesson on that, but it's to try and be like, the reason that we're doing this is because we want to create a good environment. You know, we want to also do it at this time of the day, so that it's out the way and done, so that mentally you're free and prepared. So we have those style trainings, and then from that we then have like team-based ones where we then sit and do discussion. So what I've learned, and this is potentially a good sort of system for anyone to sort of implement, is that there's we break it into sort of like a learn, reflect, and discuss. So learn can be done solo. You can sit and watch a video, you can sit and read a book, you can do this, that, and the other. But that's important. We need the knowledge of how to either communicate with a client better, or pain science, or whatever it might be, or how to read budgets. But we need them to reflect, because otherwise, if you don't think about in your own head different scenarios and stuff. So we have a lot of worksheets that we'll use, like just quick and easy stuff, but the process of writing down I find really helps. But the key thing in all of this, with any training, if you really want people to level up, is the discussion. They need to have the real world examples and say, well, but what about this scenario? Or I had this client the other day, and we do this with treatment often. They'll come and ask your advice. I had this client who, you know, their knee was a lot worse, or their skin's broken out again after I did this treatment and I don't know why. We do it for treatment, but we don't tend to do it for perhaps rebooking as much, or client communication, or understanding why your diary goes quiet after a holiday, and these sorts of things. So the learn, reflect, and discuss is a key kind of part of what the training kind of looks like for us. And that seems to have made a big difference in how quickly people learn.
You mentioned that it was definitely a process of trial and error. I'm just curious, what was, say, one thing that really didn't work and one thing that definitely worked?
Okay, so a great example of what didn't work is that, so we run an internship program. We have a massage school nearby. So people would come, we'd introduce them. It was deliberately designed to try and bridge the, you know, a lot of the massage schools don't really teach business. So we'd give them like little business tasks, and they'd come in and we would run what we call a teaching clinic. So they would do low cost appointments on clients, build up their training hours, and we would have a supervisor on site. And a few of them we then hired afterwards, and we found that like they were amazing therapists, but they weren't rebooking at all. And the problem that we'd done was, at no point during that process had we talked to them about rebooking or made it difficult. In fact, every time they turned up to our clinic, they were fully booked. Because I was like, oh my God, I've got to earn money, and I've got to do a good job, and I've got to impress them, because I'd really like people to come work for us, and I've got to show that we're a really good clinic that people want to come work. So by making it too easy for them, and having a full day of clients, and then the next teaching clinic a full day of clients, they never had to learn that it's frigging hard to rebook, and you have to put effort in, and you have to do treatment plans. So then we changed the internship, that the first weekend we fully booked them, and then after that they had to then rebook themselves, and that we literally stopped paying for the marketing and just left it the organic marketing. So then they weren't as booked. So very quickly they learned that actually that you're not going to rock up to work at a practice and just have a full diary all the time. And that created much better therapists with stuff. So basically doing too much for people and not allowing them to think for themselves was the mistake that I kind of made and was very frustrated with. And it meant they always relied on me. And as soon as I said, right, I've taught you once, I think you're clearly intelligent, I wouldn't have gotten you on the internship otherwise. Here are the tools, off you go, and I'll mentor you through. So effectively that discussion phase, I'll mentor you through. I won't leave you and just say, it's up to you. I'll mentor you, but it is your diary and your responsibility. That made a massive difference. And for contractors, in theory, that's how it should work. But we also have the same mentality with our employees as well. We'll help you with the training, but then after that is us mentoring you and you building a client base with stuff too.
I think through this process, I mean, obviously you've learned a lot going through this and building your business, and so I kind of wanted to shift the focus in a different direction of just my guests know that almost everyone I have on the show is a coach, a consultant. They almost everyone helps massage therapists in
Mhm.
some sort of way. So could you describe more of the work that you do helping other massage therapists in their businesses?
Absolutely. So I think like both in my physical practice with clients and then at the business school work, um, it's really important to me that that I create accessible advice, and meaning that there's free content that people can use, because I had to learn all of this myself. And I also couldn't afford treatments myself. So I had to learn how to self-treat. I had to research stuff on the internet and stuff. So putting advice out there that is accessible, because a lot of people really aren't necessarily in a position where they're making loads of profit with stuff. But fundamentally, all of the advice that I put out is around business growth. So I'm definitely not like a content creator and social media guru or the kind of marketing stuff. Of course, that's important. And there's things that we can do there, but definitely what I'm more interested in is that with minimal time or with minimal money, what small tasks can we focus on that's either going to free up more time, free up more money, or allow you to work with more clients? How can we help you scale your business in a way that things genuinely get easier? And that looks different for everybody. For some people, it's that I do want to work with more clients, and as a result, I'm going to hire. I do want to work with more clients, but I don't want to deliver more massages. So how am I going to monetize my business with different revenue streams? So that could be workshops, that could be an online course that they're doing. A lot of the stuff that we do for the membership, which is Clinic Business Growth, is that we'll focus on trying to find that low hanging fruit. So like last month, we looked at metrics and numbers, and we just got everyone going through with, how many appointments did you have over the past 12 months each month? And super obvious things, like we've got therapists in there who have multiple locations, and they're like, I couldn't easily get that information for you, Vicki. And I was like, well, why? Well, because we use 3 different diary systems. Okay, so what do you think could be a limiter on your growth here? If you don't have the information in one place. So they're like crushing it on like rebooking and training, but then we find these little things that you're like, oh my gosh. Well, and then they're like, oh, but it's going to be expensive and we don't have the time and we can't have downtime in the diary. And I'm like, this therefore is your win. Like, let's coach you through how to do this in your business. What's your limiting factor? You are freaking out that this isn't, that it's going to be too much hassle, but come on, you've got 3 different diary systems and you can't even get your numbers together. A good example is things like getting call answering and telephone answering services. A lot of people, me included, get really apprehensive about paying that cost and going, well, I don't have much money. It's like, where's a sensible investment? Or how do I frame this? All I need is 1 more client per month to cover that cost of that service. And then the next question is, how can I get them more profitable? And that's, for example, what we've been talking about is train those telephone call answering people in systems. If someone cancels on the phone, then train them to say, okay, we can do that for you. Would then next week at the same time work to book that back in again? And that gets your attention up. So for me, it's a lot around teaching how can we make the most of what we've already got, because there's a lot of information out there of like, buy this new thing, do this new program, do this, that and the other, which is great, but a lot of the time we need to consolidate and go, hang on, we've got so much potential to grow with what we've already got going on. So that for me is a key focus in trying to help with that.
Mm. And so as we push here towards the end, I have a few quick questions. Quick questions, they don't necessarily need to have quick answers, but I want to start with, what is a favorite failure of yours, or something that seemed like a failure at a time, but later set you up for a better success?
Oh my goodness, that's a really good one. What is a favorite? Okay. So favorite failure is renting a room from someone that I was dating and having no contract, and then them deciding to triple the rent, and instead of me paying at the end of the month, and put it in advance. And this was done over a Christmas time period. That was like huge failure, but then set me up for going, screw it, I'm not going to let people do this to me anymore. Not that I rented from lots of people that I was dating, but I'd not stuck up for myself. So then I was like, okay, I have to earn $4,500 to put down a deposit on a place that's a very business professional place. In that time, I did it. And then it really helped change my mindset, as in like, no, A, I can do this, and B, I don't need to keep compromising and being bullied in my business. So yeah, that was a good one. So yeah, don't rent from people that you date.
And what do you do when you find yourself feeling overwhelmed or frustrated?
So what I used to do was try and do everything to fix the problem. What I do now is then I try and play chicken, in that I try and leave it as long as possible before I do anything about it. So I find that I'm more of an action taker. So definitely if you're a procrastinator, I wouldn't, you tend to put stuff off. But if you're feeling very agitated, or you don't know how to deal with like the fact that this person's not rebooking and this, that, and the other, I often try and leave it for as long as possible. One, because then emotionally I'm calmer. Like the problem's still there, but I feel differently about it, which allows me to access different things. And then two, I try and remind myself, what's the worst that's going to happen here? So what is if I fire this person and then it's just me, or for example, with moving to this new premises, that was a similar situation to where I'd gone bankrupt before. I was feeling very overwhelmed about the decision. I was like, what's the worst that can happen? Well, worst case that we lose all of our team and I've overspent. Well, me and the clinic manager can cover the costs. Well, what's actually worse than that? Well, if they don't come, can I cover the costs? Yes, technically I could go back to doing, massages Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So it kind of makes the scary part smaller, to then go, well, what's the worst that can happen? And can I handle that? And to be fair, reminding yourself that if you've had big failures or stuff in the past, if you've gotten through that, and in this case, if most people have gotten through COVID, you'll be fine. But I tend to try and leave it for as long as possible, make the problem as small as possible, and then come back to it.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received, or just a favorite piece of advice, or something that's had a large impact on you or your business?
So one meaningful bit of advice I had was when I actually was having a conversation with a coach, and they were talking about trying to generate the money to do coaching with them. And I didn't at that time, I did later, but they sent me a video back and they said, Vicki, like when you talk about money, you become really closed. Like your body language changes, you get very short in your tone, like you seem close, like energetically you're down. When you talk about your clients, you are excited, you are pumped, and this, that, and the other. And it was in amongst other stuff, but it really got me thinking around, I do feel differently. When I think about the possibility of working with more clients and doing more cool stuff and helping people and teaching, I feel really good. So off the back of that, we did something called our health week, which we sort of gave away like a whole 3 weeks worth of appointments. And it's led to this whole approach of, for me, that the money follows the appointments. There's something for therapists, like working with clients makes us feel good. So as long as you have a plan, I'm not saying work for free all the time, but there's something awesome about having a client in that room. An empty room is a sad room to me, it's kind of like, oh, it's like, but if we get clients in there and you feel more energetic, then you can then think about how to monetize that off the back of it. So for me, whenever I feel stuck, I'm probably thinking too much around money and being closed and feeling down. Whereas when I think about, training more therapists or reaching more clients, like how can we do that? It tends to make me much more creative. We come up with ideas and then the money tends to follow after that. So that was a very valuable piece of advice.
So if you suddenly found yourself with the opportunity to send a short message to every massage therapist, a text or something small, bite-sized, what message would you want to send to them?
I think right now, one of the consistent ones that I'm saying to most people is like, you are crushing it. Like, don't worry. It's feeling like you're swimming with your clothes on at the moment, in that you're spluttering, like it's hard. You feel like you're putting the work in and not getting anywhere. there is going to be a time, and it won't be very far from now, and this is relevant whether you're listening as soon as this goes live or later, there's going to be a time when that weight comes off and everything's going to be so much easier, and you're going to then feel amazing for it. So don't give up. Keep that tenacity, and it's completely fine to feel overwhelmed. You are getting there, and you're doing an awesome job.
Now, as we push here towards the close, is there anything that I should have asked you about but didn't?
Oh, I don't think so. I think that with regard to systems, like I say, all I'll say is, I'm a really good example of what I call like a hot mess therapist. Like I don't do stuff properly. Like I don't think things through with stuff. But I do keep going, and I learn from things. And from, if someone who has gone bankrupt, so clearly has issues around money and asking for money and pricing, if somebody who has physically made themselves so ill that I was hospitalized at one point, so again, self-care is not there, and this, that, and the other, but had a passion for massage and had a passion for therapy, if I can get to the point where I was able to have paid maternity leave, where I have a team of people who've been supporting me through COVID. I got off a call just now from my clinic manager who has done some awesome things without me even realizing. If I've managed to do that, then genuinely, and this is as a solo parent as well, genuinely anyone can. So my only advice around that is to just keep learning, find mentors or podcasts, listen to people's content. And this idea of just not giving up. I think there's a lot of therapists and coaches and stuff out there that can seem quite intimidating. They're quite shiny. They sort of show these big numbers kind of with stuff. Whereas I think for me, what I try and do is show the messiness that got to there, but that's okay because you still get there with stuff. So yeah, it doesn't have to look pretty behind the scenes, as long as the clients are still getting it, and as long as you're okay and in one piece and you're going in the right direction.
So where can people find out more about you or connect with you?
Well, the easiest way to get a load of the content, obviously, is to listen to the podcast. So it's pretty much on all the main kind of podcast providers. So that's the Massage Therapist Business and Marketing Podcast. And that is also the same for a Facebook page. But the kind of main platform is the Massage Therapist Business School. So over there, you can access the podcast as a search tool. You can hop on the wait list for clinic business growth if you're wanting some coaching and support and the tools and resources for that. And then at the moment, or at least at the time of recording, there's a load of free COVID business resources, as well as some admin bundles to try and help save some time. And that's completely just adapted from what we've created for our clinic.
Great. So really quickly, just because I know we were talking about it before, can you let people know a little bit more about the bundles that they have available and that you have available, and how it can help them in their practices in regards to managing COVID and all the expectations?
Absolutely. So we had a call with the Clinic Business Growth members, and there's a wonderful therapist, and he's 65 years old, and he is super diligent. He already before all this had was one of those have to do everything by the book. So all the cleaning was there, and he wants to do everything properly, and tends to be a little bit slow at taking action. And you could see talking to him that he just had all this information left, right, and center of what he should be doing. But the key thing he was saying is I don't actually have a massage specific example of what a risk assessment should look like. I don't actually know where to start with pulling all this information together into what checklists I need. And I've got no idea what I'm meant to do if I get COVID-like symptoms or if a client does. So the admin bundles are basically designed as time savers. And I spent days putting them together for our clinic. And I was like, we do not need other therapists doing this. At least I vaguely have a clue with what I'm doing, and it took me this long. So there's two bundles. There's an essentials bundle, which has got like a client declaration form that you can then edit in Canva, so you can customize it super easily. A therapist one, so that you can just log as well, or your team can log, and that includes a pre-filled that you can edit it and risk assessment for massage in general and the COVID specific stuff. So again, you can use it in future and just remove the COVID stuff or update. And like I say, I've gone super geeky and gone very thorough. So you know, chances are you'll be deleting stuff rather than adding. But then the business bundle, that will have things like signage, all the checklists. The things that people have been loving is the systems. So what we've been talking about for like flow charts, email templates. So you can immediately, as soon as if you hear, you know, fingers crossed that doesn't happen, but if you hear if a client says, actually, I've developed COVID symptoms after I had an appointment with you yesterday, that you can just go bam, bam, bam and send that sort of stuff out. And I've been overwhelmed by the response with stuff. And the main thing people are saying is just how much time and stress it's saved them. So yes, if that can help any of you guys, then please go and check that out and grab yourself one.
Great, that's fantastic. And for anyone who's listening, watching, wherever, there'll be a link either around this video or in the episode description. So thanks again so much for sitting down, taking time to do this. I absolutely love every time I get the opportunity to sit down with a guest, and I'm sure that my listeners are very happy to not just hear me ramble on for however long period of time. So really, thank you so much for taking time to do this. Thanks for everyone who's watching, listening, however you're consuming this content, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.